Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to the Roots and Wings Iwachu with me, Olive Nete, a show that celebrates the stories, the journeys, and the contributions of the Rwandan community abroad and what they're doing to make their country known, where they are living, but also what they're doing to stay connected to their country. I'm joined by Jessica Mwiza, a scholar activist, Franco-Rwandan researcher. She's a writer and voice of the truth, whose work bridges personal history and national memory. Welcome to our show, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, she's pursuing a PhD in sociology at the City University of New York. Jessica has spent over a decade fighting racism and genocide ideology while challenging Eurocentric narratives about Rwanda. And in this conversation, we will uncover more about that. We'll explore her journey of identity. So Jessica, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. First of all, let's start with your journey. Could you share with our viewers briefly about your journey in a few words, where you were born, how you grew up, and how that shaped your identity?
So I was born in north of France, in a town named Lille. But a few weeks after I was born, we went south because my dad has had another work opportunity. And so we were four, me, my dad, my mom, and my big brother. And we grew up without a Rwandan community, without an African community in a very, very, very white region and town. When I was 1 year old and a half, the genocide against the Tutsi happened in Rwanda. And my mom had to come back to the country after the genocide, after the liberation, to try to find her relatives. And she saw what everyone saw at that time, a country totally destroyed, and her relative killed in the worst way, and she had to bury them. So when she came back to France, she was not the same anymore. And I grew up with a very, very sick and traumatized mom. So I had no idea of what was Rwanda, where was Rwanda, who were her family members, what was her history. And when I was a teenager, I started to fight racism with my friends in high school, but I had still no idea of my roots, my origins, my identity, my Rwandan identity, because it made me think about my mom, and it was way too sad for me. I don't know if you know the movie Petit Pays by Gaël Faye and the book, of course. The story is very similar with my mom. So it took me some years. I think I was 18, 19 when I started to read the first articles and books about Rwanda, but I did it little by little. That's why I always try to explain to young people, it's okay not to know, you just have to start somewhere with the little things, the little steps. But what helped me really, that I was already an activist and I was eager to understand what is racism, why people choose to hate, and how it operates in everyday life, even in a psychological level, sociological level. I think I was always a researcher. I wanted to know the deep answers. So when I understood our history, I also felt all the denialism in France, especially among politicians. Then I started to be very angry because I was always ready to explain our history to people who don't know. But then when I understood that some people were making it on purpose to tell the wrong story, to talk about double genocide, to talk about they killed each other, to be really racist, to be like, yeah, in Africa it's always these massacres and this type of narratives, I started to be really angry. And I think even our president says so last year or the year before, I don't remember. Sometimes as Rwandans, here or abroad, we are allowed to be angry. When our story is not respected, when everything is distorted to make us feel like we are less human than Westerners, for example, we are allowed to be angry and we are allowed to put people at their place again.
Yes. breaking down what you were saying, you said that you grew up really without knowing your Rwandan roots. I'd like to go back to what you just said, that you started fighting racism at your teenage years.
Yeah.
Now, what made you do that? You said you grew up in a community where there were no Africans, no Rwandans. How did that feel? And how did that push you to fight racism in reality?
So this region I grew up in is really particular because historically we have many former colonialists from Algeria and their families living in these towns. So I grew up among people who had nostalgia of colonialist times. Who were deeply, deeply racist. And in south of France, they don't have any social filters. They will just look at you and call you negress, negro, and tell you stuff like, oh, but I've never seen a black doctor, I've never seen a black lawyer, you guys don't know anything, you've never invented anything, and stuff like that. So I think it was a curse, but it was also easier for me because sometimes people, they grew up in, let's say, Paris, and they don't see racism because it's too, maybe it's too, comment on dit, c'est trop léger, and they hide it very well because they know what they can and what they cannot say. But in south of France, they don't care. They just say it in your face. So I grew up with this like blunt attacks each and every day at school, in my neighborhoods. It was children, it was adults, sometimes it was even doctors. I heard things that were really shocking. At an age we are not supposed to understand this. So I think it helped me be strong, but also I was always asking questions like why, and searching on the internet, asking my friends, because sometimes I knew their parents were also activists, fighting like Front National and Le Pen family in south of France. So they knew also little about racism, and I started there. But I learned that people never do this because they don't know, because they don't know better. And that's the thing we say among each other maybe to feel better about ourselves. We be like, no, they don't know, they're uneducated, that's why they're racist. But racism is a crime invented by intellectuals, by scholars, by people who read books, who wrote books, and who then helped politicians to use these types of ideology in order to divide and conquer. So that's what I learned in south of France, for sure.
Yeah. Now, going back to your Rwandan roots, when was the first time coming to Rwanda? And before that, when did you feel the need to reconnect with your Rwandan roots? You said your mother has lived the worst traumatic events after coming back to Rwanda, seeing her family killed and everything. After all those, I would say that you also tested that life because you lived with a mother who had that past. When did you feel the need to reconnect with the Rwandan roots?
I think it was always somewhere inside of me, because despite of the bad years where I saw my mom really, really, really sick until she died in 2002, I also kept the good memories of her in me. To me, she was this beautiful African woman who spoke a language that I couldn't understand on the phone. And I was fascinated. I was just like, I was staying near her, listening to her speaking Kinyarwanda, and I was just like, wow, when I was a kid, I was really impressed. So I kept these beautiful memories with me, even when she was sick and too traumatized to explain anything to me. So it was always inside of me somewhere, somehow. And I think when I was 18, 19, because I was talking about racism all the time, and black people and white people and African people, it became too obvious that I had to do something about my own history. What was difficult is that I had no one to tell me, hey, go back home, or come with me, I'll show you Rwanda, or let me explain to you history of Rwanda and of your family. I was really, really, really alone with no one to help me in that journey. So I just booked a ticket and I went. And also I remember that when I was 7, 8 years old, I was exchanging letters with my cousin in Netherlands. So I found these letters back, and I remember like the names of my family members in Kigali in Rwanda. So I was able to make the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you've also worked deeply, and you're still doing that extensively on combating genocide ideology, specifically the genocide against the Tutsi. Why is it so crucial to you to fight, to preserve the truth about the genocide against the Tutsi, and the work you're doing, especially for young Rwandans who didn't experience the genocide against the Tutsi at first hand?
So I think when I started to fight for preserving the memory, my first thought were for the survivors and for the people we lost. I was deeply, as I said, sad and angry when I was younger, and I couldn't understand why people can make the decision to lie about a history that was so bad and so traumatic for all of us. Then I understood it's not only because they hate Rwanda or Rwandans. It's also because it's in their hearts to believe that part of people on this planet are lesser than us. So I started to really mix this fight against racism, like global racism, and protection of the memory of the genocide against the Tutsi. And also, I was deeply humbled by the work that has been done here by Rwandans who stayed in the country, by the survivors, and also by those who came back early after the genocide in the country to rebuild it. So after my first trip in Rwanda, I was really moved, really humbled, and I wanted to help. Often I hear people say things like, it's so difficult what you're doing in France because I write papers, I fight online against the nihilists, articles, books, documentaries, or people who are just talking nonsense. And I do that even if it's difficult, even if I get insults in DM or everything, and people are like, yeah, it's difficult, how do you do that? But for me, the real difficult part of the job was to rebuild this country from the scratch, from 94 to now. And especially people who did that from the first decade after the genocide. So I feel like us in the diaspora, to fight to protect memory, to tell our history, our narrative, is the bare minimum we can do. I'm not saying it's easy. I know people sometimes find it difficult to write, to speak up, to record little videos on TikTok, or to even tweet or write on threads. But I really want us to be mindful of the work that has been done before us, because we are sitting on the shoulders of giants. And each and every little thing we can do will help. There's no little step. Coming back to what you're just saying, the contributions of Rwandans living abroad, I'd like to break it down now to young people. Most of the young people, they're like, I don't know what I can do. I don't know where to start. Sometimes they're like, I wasn't even born when this happened. But what advice or what message would you give to the Rwandan community abroad, especially young people who see these narratives most of the time, Western countries distorting the history, saying the history as they wanting to deny and distort it? What would your message be to these young Rwandans that are living in those countries and that are staying silent? First of all, I don't want to say that their feeling is not valid. Of course, our history is really ancient. The root causes of the genocide, it's the colonialist times. And it is difficult to learn and to know each and every aspect of the history. But it's like when you're at like in front of a mountain, to get on top. You're not gonna run, it's not gonna take 5 minutes. You gotta start somewhere. And we are lucky, for the past 30 years, so many books, articles have been written, and we even have podcasts, really good podcasts, and TV shows like yours. So they just have to start somewhere. It's not difficult. Each and every week, to pick maybe a series of podcast episodes or a book, to read maybe 5 pages a day, and then it will be easier for them to participate in the fight, to preserve the memory. Yes. Then they can start to share posts. They don't have to write posts or to record videos. Even just sharing is important. And often we see that people think, oh, someone else is going to do the job. But we are not so many Rwandans, I'd say, in this whole planet, so we really need everybody to participate. Yeah, that's my message.
Coming back to the work you're doing, you've spoken, you've written about how Rwanda is often misunderstood, misrepresented in Western narratives. Now, considering the misconceptions in these Western countries, how can Rwandans abroad help reframe true narratives?
So the answer is easy to share, but not easy to apply. I think we really must take a step back from believing everything we hear and see in the big mainstream media in these Western countries. For example, CNN, BBC, France 24, RFI in French, because they are not the ones who are sending people on the ground here in Rwanda, in our country. And also because I've learned for so many years that media, they really work like political party. Like they have a narrative to protect and to share generation after generation. And like journalists, they will believe older journalists that came maybe in Rwanda or in the Congo or in the region during these troubled times. And often denialism, it passes a long generation for these journalists. So we really need to be careful with the sources. We need to make a background check. Like when we hear something, when we read something, we will then Google the name of the journalist and see who are his friends, who are his colleagues, what have they published themselves, to be able to understand what is the narrative they will share. And we must start to believe in ourselves, to believe in our journalists, in our scholars, in our people of culture, in our writers, and to maybe put in them the same faith we put in white people. And I know Rwandans are really quick to say that they are proud of their country, that they are proud of themselves, but then at the same time, they will always try to be validated by the Western big platforms or media. It's not always the goal. The goal is always to grow among ourselves and to help our people grow, to help our platforms grow, and then to rebuild our identity among people who really respect it.
Now let's go to parents. Most of the times the parents are raising their kids outside the country, far away for various reasons that are understandable, I would call it like that, because sometimes some are finding a life, they're working abroad and they have to stay with their kids. What are some of the culture parts that these parents can pass on their kids to their kids, even if they're far away from home, that can help or build their identity, even living far away from Rwanda? As you were living far away from Rwanda, but there are some things that you spoke about, the language you would listen to your mom speaking in Rwanda. What are some of the parts of the culture do you think these parents can share with their kids so that they can shape their identity even living far away?
So the first step will be to share the family story. And it seems like it's a basic step or that it's obvious, but I know that so many families don't even explain to their kids like the family story, where they come from in Rwanda, what happened to them during the genocide, and what was the reason of the migration in the first place. Yes. People sometimes just live their lives and think that their kids will be maybe safer if they remain in these Western cultures, speaking only French and English and trying to fit in the culture they currently live in. But I feel like we grow up stronger when we know where we come from. And when we know we have a home. And we must always remember that we are very, very lucky. I lived among African people, especially when I was in Paris, after I was 21, 22. And I knew so many young people who don't know anything about their country and their culture, and often it's because they can't even go back home. Because their country is at war, because the poverty is too much, the insecurity is too much, the corruption is too much. And often in Europe, because I mainly know Europe, I've been in New York since only 8 to 9 months, so it's still new to me, but in Europe, Black and brown people, they are not proud of their country. And you can feel it in the way they move, in the way they apply for jobs, in the way they interact with people. And I feel like if we use it well, we have this strength of having a country, of being proud of our country, of having these amazing events, Giants of Africa, the tour of, I don't know how to call it in English, le Tour du Monde de vélo qui arrive. So we have a beautiful narrative that can help us fight this racism and also this self-hate, because unfortunately, most young people, Black and brown people, growing up in this Western country, they have a sense of being less than others. And even if the families try to fight it by saying stuff like, no, racism is for bad people, dumb people, don't be like that, don't be troubled by that, it's too powerful. And to have a country and to understand the history of the country, starting with the history of the family, is the first step and a very powerful one.
I would say that you're one of the Rwandans who have lived abroad, but who interact more with Rwanda and the Rwandan culture in terms of staying here, in terms of participating in various things, especially in the work you're doing to fight genocide ideology and denial. Would you speak to young Rwandans living in various parts of the world? Some of them think that living abroad is the most beautiful thing. They think that if I go and live in the United States or any other country, it will be the best achievement I have ever made. But as we always say, Iwachu, or home will always be home, regardless. What would you say to them, as someone who you have lived in France, now in the United States, but you're seen more in our country, coming back for various reasons? What would you tell them as someone who has lived in those areas?
First of all, I would say that it's not a bad thing to want to go live abroad. If someone has a dream or want to go to a certain school that we don't have in the region, it is a really okay thing to do. Because I don't want to speak in a position where I will be ignoring my privilege. I have a French passport. So it's really easy for me to come back here in Rwanda. Also, I have Rwandan nationality, of course, to go back to France, to go to, I don't know, Italy, and then to do my PhD in New York. It's really easy for me. So I don't want to not think about that privilege and just give a lesson. It's okay to have dreams, to go abroad for a reason. But first of all, I think one must have a good reason.
Yes.
A dream, like you want to be a doctor in a field that we don't have yet in Rwanda. For example, we need orthophonists. We don't have them. So if a young kid have this dream of going abroad to study this, it will be amazing. Yeah. But also, if it's just going abroad for the sake of going abroad, it can be a bit dangerous. Because my experience is that we are like full human beings with dignity and the knowledge of our history and culture at home. When we are outside, it's difficult to really belong somewhere. And often it's even harder than this. How many times have I been in, I don't know, rooms, meetings with people who actually are less qualified than me, but they will totally ignore my opinions and my knowledge because I'm a woman, because I'm an African woman. Yeah. And let me tell you that in these Western countries, being half white is not a thing. You're black, you're African. Especially if you're young, you're a woman, it's even worse. But this feeling of never being heard, of your knowledge always being doubted, it's really difficult to live. And it's not a way of feeling good about ourselves. It's not possible to live like this, I think, in my opinion. So sometimes people think that they will be better in the United States, in France, in Belgium, but the way you are respected here as a full human being has no price. And I really don't want people to do these mistakes anymore, to go abroad, to being just like a waitress with a really small pay for the rest of your life, and then to flex on social media, to pretend that you have a good life, but meanwhile, you will go back home and live in a really, really, really small apartment where you are struggling with mental health issue and with finance issues. It's not a way, it's not a dream.
It's not a life.
Exactly, it's not a life.
Now, time is not on our side, and we are about to wind up this episode. But I would, as we said in the intro, you are doing your PhD in sociology, and how is this PhD going to contribute to the work that you're already doing, and how is this helpful in empowering what you have started?
So I feel like it's a continuity. It's the same thing. As an activist, I was always a researcher. I want to understand the deep root causes of the genocide against the Tutsi and of this ideology that is unfortunately growing in the region. People are calling themselves Nilotic, Hamitic, Bantu, and real massacres happen as we speak in the Congo, in the eastern part of Congo, because people identified as Tutsi or Hamitic or whatever are still targeted. So I want to understand how it operates in a society, in families, in everyday discussions, to be able to fight it better. Because the ultimate goal is for our kids, our children, to be able to live in Rwanda, but maybe tomorrow go work in Kinshasa for a few months, then go back, then go on holidays in Tanzania without the fear of being called Rwandan, you're like this, you're like that, you're a Tutsi, you're Hamitic, you're whatever. Yes. And this ideology is a copy-paste from white supremacist ideology that was created in Europe. And I feel like we have troubles to understand that deeply. So I want to help, first of all, understand it myself, and then create tools and articles and books to be able to explain it, maybe in a way that culturally we'll be able to understand and work with, so that our children will grow up in a world where these ideologies no longer exist. That's the goal. But it's a continuity. I'm still an activist.
Yes.
Even if I'm doing a PhD, I really want to identify myself as an activist first.
Yes. Thank you, Jessica Mwiza, for sharing your insights with our viewers. And in this episode of the Roots and Wings Iwachu, we've learned so much about what young Rwandans can do abroad, the work that is really there, and how they can also give their contribution in shaping the real narratives without having to listen to other narratives that the Western countries or any other part of the world is telling about our country. This episode of The Roots and Wings takes off here. It's been a pleasure to have you,
Thank
Jessica.
you so much.
Yeah. My name is RwandaTV, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the Roots and Wings Iwachu. Thank you for being with us on this episode. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.